G'day and welcome back. As you can see in front of me, I've got this old radio. Now, there's a bit of a story behind this. I was shown photos of this some months ago and asked if I could do anything. I said, no, it's a piece of rubbish, throw it in the bin. And that was the last I heard of it. Last week I got a phone call from the owner and she said, look, can you fix it? It's got sentimental value. And I said, oh. She said, I'll bring it down. All right, okay. So she brought it down, and on seeing it, my impression of it didn't get any better. This is an old console and somebody has cut the bottom off. So now it's a tabletop console. It's way out of proportion. It's too wide, it's too big. It hasn't got a speaker. The speaker part of it's been cut off. I don't know where that is, but it's certainly been out in the weather. It's a mess. Now apparently it was used in a dairy farm, and I don't know if they serenaded the cows with it or what they did, but it's not had a good time. If you have a look on the top, there's another one they brought down for me to have a look at because I had nothing to do. This is an old AWA radiola. It's pretty straightforward sort of radio. He said he wants to put it in his shed. Can you get it going? Okay, I can get that going. I don't have to do too much to the cabinet. I'll give it a wipe and that'll be about it. So I had a look around at this thing. It's starting to peel off the veneer here. It's got inlay veneer there. It doesn't really have legs. It's just sitting on where they've cut it off. They've done a nice job of cutting it off, I've got to say. This veneer here is all coming apart. I don't know. So what I thought I could do is perhaps make a plinth put around the bottom and just kind of tidy it up a bit, restain it, refinish it, and make it look attractive. It's never going to look good, but well, that's what they want. The radio itself is made by Bland Radio. They came from Adelaide. I think they called all their radios Operatics or something like that. I don't have a lot of information on them. There is nothing about this. This is a Model C. I don't have any schematics or anything for this. As you can see, it's got a huge amount of rust on it. The transformer top's rusted, valves are broken. It's a 6F5. I've got spares of those, I think. So in all, a very typical Australian radio. I don't think there'll be any issues as far as repairing it. Wire probably is rotted out. Anyway, we'll have a look in a minute. Like the cabinet itself is just falling apart. I don't know. The first thing I'm going to do is pull this chassis out. We'll have a look underneath. If it looks like I can repair it, fine. If I can't, I think I'll just hand it back to them and say I can't do it, it's too hard. Alrighty, I'll undo the screws. Here's a shot of the back. Has antenna and ground, and it's called a Model C. Provision for a record player input. Missing speaker socket, and that's a voltage selector. Here's the remnants of the Arts and P sticker, which is the licensing system we had in Australia, and you can see a G there. The G denotes that this was built in 1940 or 41. It's a pretty standard valve setup, 5x3 rectifier, 6F5 output valve. This is the detector and preamp, that's a 6B6 I think. Over here's the mixer, that's a 6A8, and the 6U7G for the IF amplifier. The pointer's broken, but I can replace that. Pretty generic looking scale here. There's no brand name on it that I can see. Now it's got a tuning dial, that'll be tone, that'll be volume, and this will be the shortwave selector switch. The dial glass, the numbers are falling off, so I can't even touch that. I can wipe the front off. If I touch the back, it's just going to fall apart. Underneath doesn't look too bad. It's only got two bands, so one shortwave. But yeah, generally it's not too bad. The capacitors are all okay. I mean, they're not okay. They're not eaten away is what I was concerned with. Once they eat them away, of course, you can't read the values. But generally it looks all right. Someone's been in here recently, like in the last 40 years, and put new capacitors in there. These have been bypassed, the old electrolytic capacitors. Something's been eating at the insulation on these wires, but otherwise the insulation's pretty good. I'll take it inside, put it on the bench and see what we can do with it. I have the radio inside now. I've just flipped it upside down and mounted it on this stand. I've tested the primary on the transformer and it's okay. It's not shorted to ground. I use a mega on that and it's okay. The output on the secondary we can measure here on this rectifier valve base. There's no rectifier in there. So I can put the power on. I'm on dim bulb and isolated power supply, of course. Give you 230 volts. Now this is only powering the transformer. I've got my meter on AC volts. I'll just put the probe on here and ground it. This is one side of the secondary and it's measuring 357. And here's the other side, and that's measuring 357. So they're perfect. That's perfect. That transformer's working properly as far as that winding is concerned. We can check the 5 volt supply to the rectifier here. 5 volts. That's good. I found a speaker I can use. It's got a couple of holes in it, but it'll work alright. It'll work. I've put a 5x3 rectifier in. I haven't plugged the speaker in yet, so this will just go and power some of the capacitors, not these ones, but it'll power some capacitors. We'll just see how we're going with it all. It's on dim bulbs still, and I'll just turn it on. Dim bulb's coming on, it's going down, so alright. I've put the speaker plug in. I'm going to power it on again. Now this is stupid doing this. This thing's been sitting around for about 40 years and I'm putting power on it. So if you don't know what you're doing, do not do this at home. Bulb on, not going off. Alright, that bulb stayed on. Now it turns out this is the volume control. I don't think we're going to get anywhere. There's not enough voltage, and alright, that's no good. My first rule of troubleshooting is divide and conquer. I'm going to take the 3 valves out here. That'll leave us with the amplifier, and we'll see if we can get some noise out of that. And by taking the valves out, it'll give us a bit more voltage too. I've got the 3 valves out, so let's see what happens now. Well, that light hasn't come on at all. Now I know this valve works because I tested it. Alright, we've got a bit more voltage now. There's no hum from the speaker. I'll turn it up a little bit. I don't want to go too far. And there comes the globe now. 200 volts. Yeah, there's nothing from the speaker, so something isn't right. 204 volts. No, something not right there. So I'll turn it off. We'll have to do some investigating. I've flipped the radio over and I've put in another speaker. I had to just sort of jerry-rig wire it. It didn't have the right plug on it. I know this speaker works. Now, all I'm interested in at the moment is getting this amplifier section working. If I get that working, then I can work back towards the front end and hopefully it'll all work. At the moment, I'm not getting any sound at all through the speaker apart from some hum. So I'll just check the voltages on the valve. We'll see what we get. So I'll put power on it again. Now we've got coming out of our rectifier around about 334 volts, coming back into the, I think this is the screen, 281, that's good, and this is a plate I'm pretty sure on these, 279. Now what have we got on the grid? You're getting no noise from the grid. 122 volts DC on the grid. Okay, that's not good. It would appear this capacitor's completely gone short. I checked it earlier and it was not good, but it wasn't short. Alright, we'll try again. -6, should be higher than that. I think these 6F6 run at around 15 or 20 on the grid bias, but anyway, still not producing. It did make a noise there for a second on the speaker. It did it again, so there is a little noise there now. I've replaced that 6F6 with a good 6V6. The 6F6 was no good, so I wasn't worried about frying it. But let's see. Oh, there you go. Yeah, so I'll just try and I'll try and hide the speaker up. Okay, so that's working now. So we'll replace that capacitor there, and I might put this valve in. We'll see if that part will work. I've put that detector valve back in and I'll put some power on it again. So just see what voltage we've got there now. -9. Okay, a bit better than a couple hundred volts. There's a bit more noise in the speaker now. I'm just putting my finger on the volume control there. There's nothing going on there. The input into that's not working, the grid. I should have got something. Now we're still pretty low on the voltage, 192. I'm just touching the volume control there. There's nothing getting through that valve into the output. So it's going out there. There's the plate from that one. It's getting over there, but there's not much going into the plate. I'll put a new valve in there and just see if that brings it up. I've got a new old stock 6B6 in there. The power's on and it's just warmed up. Let's see if that works. Can you hear that? Alright, if I touch that now, there it goes. Okay, so now we know the amplifier and the preamp's working. I might put the other two valves in and we'll just see if it'll work. I've got the other two valves in, so we're ready to go. That's interesting, it's me that's making that do that. How about that? So I'm inducing a signal into the plates. Alright, this isn't working at all now. The preamp's not working. So get rid of this one. It does look like it is working because I was able to induce a signal into that IF amplifier there. Yeah, so it's working now. There's maybe something wrong with that 6S7. Hang on, I'll find a new one of those. I've put a new 6U7 in there. We'll just see if that does anything. That sounds better.
Or Fangella at $6. Number 7, Cavalier Charles, $2. It's $2.40 fixed price with Fangella, perhaps it is, at $5. Then we've got Kodagat at $5.50, Underground Music $6.50, and Cadanzaro at $7.
Alright, so it's working, but it's only getting one station. It's quite possible these capacitor plates are shorting up this end. Although it's not making any noise. A bit of noise there. Yeah, you can hear it when it just changes from that point to the other. It turns into a radio. So, alright, so I think those capacitor plates, and it's probably the oscillator plate shorting because it still has the sound of a radio, but there's no tuning. So I'll just put my finger there. Yeah, I can reach in it. So that's the oscillator. I think I can see that plate's actually touching, so I'm going to try and bend it out of the way. Alright, let's see if that works. Alright, I can pick up another station now, so that plate must have been rubbing. Not very strong though. You can probably hear that, it's not very loud. Yeah, a lot of noise there. Alright, I'll turn all this off. That's all I wanted to do, was just make sure it's going to work. Obviously it needs all the valves replaced or checked and replaced as required. I've got to dig up a 6F6. I do have one, I'm just not sure where it is. I can use the 6B6, I'm just going to change the bias and I can still use that, but I'll try and get the 6F6 back in if I can. I left all the original components in it, and I know people will say, oh, you should have changed all that. That's not what I'm trying to do. I want to see what it did before anybody changed it. I left that sacrificial 6F6 in there because I knew that capacitor would be ruined, although I didn't think it would be that bad. So I was prepared to lose the 6F6. It wasn't any good. Anyway, I'm pretty confident this will work. I can make it work properly. I'm not sure why it's only getting one station, but I'll sort that out eventually. I think what I'll do first is just pretty up the chassis. It's got a small rust problem. I need to get rid of that. I'll repaint it, clean all the bits up. These will come up all right. Work on that capacitor to make sure it's not shorting and clean it all up. It's pretty corroded in there. I'll test all the valves, and I reckon it'll work all right. I have another issue with the speaker. I'm thinking of making an external speaker box for it with an external speaker that could sit on top and perhaps match what the rest of the cabinet looks like. And I might even change it over to using a permanent magnet speaker. So I've got to find some sort of choke or something to put in there to take the place of the permanent magnet. You can use a resistor, but then they're not quite as good. Then I've got to find an output transformer for it and just a speaker. I've got plenty of normal speakers. A car speaker would be fine, wouldn't matter. So I'll look at doing that. So a fair bit of work to do on this, and of course then I've got to do the cabinet. I'm not sure how I'm going to make that look pretty. Anyway, nothing like a challenge, and this is certainly a challenge. So I think I'll take it out into the workshop now, strip it all down, and we'll start redoing this chassis. You'll see what's left of it actually. It's got some pretty big rust marks in it. Just before I take this out to the workshop, I'll just let you know that I'm using some new editing software. I'm at the base of a very steep learning curve. If there's any glitches or it's just not as smooth as it used to be, just give me a little time and I'll get used to it. All right, let's get this puppy out to the workshop. I've got the radio outside now, and I'm just going to dismantle all this equipment here. I'll probably take just about everything off, I think. Then I have to treat the rust, so I'll put it in the sandblaster to do that. I have a hammered finish paint here, which will cover up the defects that the rust is going to leave. So the hammer finish will kind of make it less noticeable. There's the original green, which is lighter than what this is, but this will be all right. That's the only one I could get. I was very lucky to get that. The first thing I'm going to do is remove this big dial plate and put that aside. That's done to that stage. I still need to remove little clips like this. I've got to work out how I'm going to remove these and remember where the wires go. So I'll probably put some little numbers on here, pull them back through, and then number around the top here. The top of the chassis is pretty rusty, and it's got that red dirt that we have out in the outback here. So I'm not sure where this farm was, but there's a lot of rust there. It's probably been mice urinating on it. I might see if I can leave these coils here and just put something over to protect them and keep them safe. I'm going to leave this for today. I'll come back in the morning and I'll get stuck into the rust removal. I'm going to remove these coils here. I've got some heat shrink here which I've labelled to put on the wires, and I'll put some tape around the top here so I can just put some numbers on that. I'll call this F1, which is front wire number 1 for no particular reason. That's one done. I'll do the rest of them and then I can remove the coil, and hopefully I can pull these back through the hole in the chassis. I've removed the coil. I only needed 3 because one of the wires goes out the top as a grid, so they hopefully will go through there. There we go. Now I'm wondering if I should mark these here, at least put one mark here with F1 or something on it. I could probably etch something in there with my Dremel, I think. There you go, that'll do. Only need the two, the third one's obvious. I'll move on to this one now and do the same thing and pull that one through. Everything's finished. I ended up taking those two coils out. They're just going to get damaged. I made a lot of effort to make sure I know where everything goes. So I've put marks on the wires. I've even backed it up here. I wrote on the back of the chassis, so hopefully I can get it back together. So I've taken everything else off here. This is completely nude now. I've taken the controls off the front here, and around the back I've taken everything off. I could unsolder that, I suppose, but I think I'll just work around that. The other thing I need to look at is this glass here, or at least pull it apart. There's so many bits to this radio, it's going to take me forever. So there's just had a bit of wire in there, so I'll pull that out and just put another bit of piano wire in there. There's a couple of screws holding this all together. There's a screw up in there, but you can get to it through the pulley here. So we'll just take one off, and you have to wind it the other way, I guess. And I've already taken one of those off. Oh, it's got a little spring in there. Take out the slack, I guess, isn't it? It's a anti-hysteresis thing. Alright, I'll have to try and rebuild that. Hopefully that'll come out. There we go. Oops. So there's half the print on the back. Alright, well there's the glass. It's still mostly there. It's relatively clean on the back. Now what I can do is try and just clean this up in the areas that the glass is with no print, and then maybe just mist it with some clear lacquer or something. Alright, now that's ready to be sandblasted and resprayed. I said I was going to do this in the sandblaster. I'm not sure what I was thinking there. This is so thick, the sandblaster will take me a day to get that off. So I'm going to use a wire wheel, and that will take it off. I might put it in the sandblaster later just to get the rust that's deep in the crevices. But I'm going to rust treat it anyway, so it probably doesn't need it. I think the wheel will do it. Yeah, that'll be all right. So I'm going to put a mask on and some protective gear, and then I'll do all this. I'll come back and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, I've done all that now. I've done the whole outside. I've even done inside where some rust has come through around these edges. So I'm going to treat this with a rust converter. So I'll just use that. It's phosphoric acid, of course. But I've still got all this other stuff. I've got to clean all this off. Clean all this stuff up here. Look at that. That's all got to be cleaned and painted. The frame for the dial's got to be done. So there's a lot of work to do. I'm just going to turn the cameras off. I'll clean everything up and treat them with rust inhibitor. I'll come back when we're getting close to painting. I've sandblasted all these other bits behind here, or media blasted I should call it. Sandblasted is an old term that I used to use. So I'm putting some rust killer on here, and this soaks for about 15 minutes, maybe a little longer. Wipe it off with water and or damp cloth, and then a bit of methylated spirits on the top, which I think you call wood alcohol, perhaps. Can't remember now. So I'll do all around the front and back and the sides here of this. Then I'll do all these other parts as well. Let them soak, clean them up, and we'll get close to being able to paint it. I've done all this with the rust converter, done inside here as well. So I'll wipe this off with some water and some methylated spirits, as I said. I also put this in the media blaster and straightened all the little fins, the plates, and it should be working. I can't hear it scraping anywhere, and I'll hold it up to the light. You can see through them all. I go inside and just throw it on the meter and just make sure it is okay. There were some stations missing originally, and this may be the reason. So I've got a multimeter here. I'll put that on there. So no suggestion of a short there. Same there. Okay, so that's working fine. So that wasn't the problem, or it isn't now. If we've still got the no stations at the bottom end of the scale, then we'll have to look at something else. All right, I'm back outside again. This has been at least half an hour, so I'm going to clean it off, and the rust will have gone black. Anything that wasn't rusty should be shiny, which is where it is there. I've masked all the chassis up and I've cleaned it with wax and grease remover. I've primed all the other little bits and pieces. They're hanging around the workshop drying. I forgot to do the top of the transformer, so I'll have to go and just clean that up, sandblast it and treat that as well. Now the areas I cleaned inside the chassis up and removed the rust, I've primed that and it's green, so it kind of matches anyway, but that's going to be enough treatment for inside. So I'll just do this outside now. That looks really good. It's there's not much damage from the rust at all now. Anyway, I'll let that sit for about 5 hours and I can put a top coat on it. While the paint's drying, I'm going to put a new bit of fish paper around here. Here's the old coating that was on there, or the wrapping. So I'm going to put a new bit of sticky fish paper on. Now here's the paper. It's sticky back, so I'm just going to peel some of the backing off it up to here somewhere and then pass the whole thing through so it doesn't try and glue itself on the way through. I don't think it would, but I'll just make sure it doesn't. So I should be able to get that through. There we go. I'll line them up so that it lines up when I do it. I should be able to stick that on there. Okay. It did have insulation on these wires, so I'm replacing it with a bit of heat shrink. There we go. With a bit of luck, I should be able to pull this tape off here and just stick this down again. There we go. Do the same with the other side. There it is. That's come up quite well. Good. Everything's dried now. I've primed everything. I've got some paints here that I'm going to paint the various parts different colours. The parts on the dial that were in here, like these rotors, they were a blue colour, so the hammered blue that I've got is pretty much exactly the right colour. So I'm going to use that on those parts. There's some silver there. I might do the frame in silver. I've mounted the transformer on some blocks of wood here and just taped around the edges. I'm going to spray all that, and I'll use a colour called Monument. And this is good. This is a metal shield, of course, and all these paints are rust paints, so they should protect it from rusting again. But the Monument's good. It's not black, but it's a kind of a, I'm not going to say gunmetal, but a charcoal colour, I guess. So I'll put on some safety gear and I'll start painting. That is looking really good. The rust is gone, the divots are gone. So that's coming up really well. A colour, yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. Now that blue paint that I put on just came out in a stream, so it was very hard to control, and it's kind of left some runs, but it doesn't really matter for where it's going to be. Otherwise, everything came out well. So I'm going to leave this dry. I've got to let it dry for about 24 hours before I can even think about starting to reassemble anything. But I've got plenty of things to do tomorrow, which I can start cleaning up the cans and coils and whatever else. So I'll get everything else ready. It's been a few days since I painted all this stuff, so the paint should be reasonably hard. I changed the colour on this one, or the paint. This is a hammer finish. I had the monument colour on, but it looked awful, so I've changed it to silver. That looks better. I've polished all the cans and I've sprayed them with a bit of clear lacquer as well. So they're looking good. I polished those in the lathe. I've cleaned all the nuts and bolts, removed all the rust. So everything's ready to go back together. I assembled this mechanism here. This is the tuning mechanism. So that's ready to go. The chassis come up really nice. It's really good. Looks really good. Colour's a little bit brighter than it should be, but it's not too far off what it was originally. So yeah, it's okay. I've got to take all the masking off, and I think what I'm going to do is assemble the hardware out here, and then I'll take it inside to do all the wiring, because there's so many wires I've disconnected. I'll start taking the masking off, and we'll come back when that's all finished. All that masking's off, and golly, this has come up well. This, where the rust was, it's just covered it with this paint. It's very good. I also noticed this on the inside. It's written in pencil. It's the 4th of the 5th, 1940. I think that's a 40. And it's got his name, R.L. or something. I can't quite read that. L it is, and not sure what that is. And it says OK up the top there. So that's the 4th day of the 5th month. It's not the American way of doing it. 1940. So yeah, that was interesting. So that must have been their quality control. As I said, I'll put all the hardware back. So first thing I can do is reattach these switches and controls on the front. That's as far as I want to go at this stage. The hardware's there that I can now connect all the wiring underneath to. There's a frame to go on here for the dial. I'm not going to put that on yet. I can operate that from here, and that's just in the way otherwise. So the next stage is to take it inside, flip it over, and try and connect all the wires back where they were. I'm pretty nervous actually. I'm not totally confident, but I guess I'll get there. But yeah, a lot of stuff disconnected underneath. I've got the radio inside, upside down, soldering irons on. What I'm going to do is start at this side of the radio and work my way across. This side's fairly easy. This will be more difficult this end. I redid all the wiring coming out of the transformer here. These are the secondaries out, and that's the primaries going in. So I've changed all the wires. They were in very poor condition. Originally the nut on here was used as a point to attach all the centre tap wiring, but I found that actually had a connection to ground. It wasn't totally isolated. I've put a little solder tab here, a bit hard to see from your angle, but there is a solder tab there, and I'm going to use that as an isolated from the chassis, and I'll put the centre tap wiring on there. These resistors will go over there. I will replace this capacitor as I go past. I've got to unsolder all this anyway. I'll check that resistor. I think that one was okay. I think this one's a bit out, and I'll just replace them as required as I go along. Another capacitor there. Yeah, as I said, I'll just sweep across, and that should clear up all the loose bits of wiring and just make it a bit easier when I get to this end. I won't have other bits of wire that are hanging around that shouldn't be there. Okay, so far so good. I'm up to about halfway here, so that's the easy part. So it's not half the job, but it's it's well on the way. So it all went pretty well. Now this part here is going to be a bit more difficult, but I'll just do it slowly, and I should be okay. A couple of the big things I remember: these two trimmers went on there with the ground. This is off the capacitor on the top, the tuning capacitor. They all went to ground. That one goes there. Yeah, so it should be easy enough. I'll work it out. There'll be a couple of wires I won't know where they go. But I can look back at my photos and just work out where they go. That's all back together now. I think it's okay. I think I put most things back together. Let's hope so. I checked a few times, checked it against the photos, and everything looks pretty good. So I'm going to put some power on and see what it does. I've flipped the radio over, so I'll check some voltages before I put power on completely. So all I'm powering now is the transformer. So I'll check these here. We should have, I think, was it 700 odd volts? Yeah, 734 volts. So that's okay. I'll put the rectifier in. That's in. I'll put some power on again. Now the radio is fully powered now. Going through the dim bulb, of course, but it's fully powered. That looks pretty good. Nothing much happening there. I would expect that voltage should have dropped more than that. Now we should have something out here, which will be 500 volts. That seems high. I don't know if it is or not. That's it. Going up there. So that's 500 volts again. Comes back here, 500 volts still, goes off to the screen here, 508, and it seems high, seems really high actually. Got no voltage there, something's not right there. I'll turn it off. The supply is coming along here, it goes into one side of the field, comes out the other side of the field. It's then coming along here, it goes onto the screen. This green wire here is the transformer output, so that's not getting any power. So either the speakers, there's nothing on that, there's nothing on that pin. Wait a minute, wait, I've left a wire off that. I found the original capacitor that was in here. It went on there, down here, and then it picked up this pin, this connector on the way past, and I've actually put a bit of insulation on there, so I need to strip off that insulation and pick up this connector and we'll be back in business. Okay, I've repaired that. I've run the wire through this clip here and then onto the bottom connector as well. So I'll put power on again, we'll see what it does this time. The radio's working, I can hear the hum anyway. 190, that looks better. Whoa, there we go. The meter was making it squeal, so I've just taken that away. 168 volts there and 185 on the screen, so that's okay. The grid is -10. I'll flip the radio over, I'll see if I can actually pick anything up. There's a hum there. So radio stations. So it's working all the way through. Just hasn't got any stations. I must have done something wrong because it appears to be working on the shortwave setting. Maybe not. Alright. I'm pretty sure that was medium wave. There is nothing. I've connected the antenna directly to this valve's grid here, and you can kind of hear there's a lot of stations coming through at once, which means the oscillator's not separating them. So I guess I'll go and check everything. I think it's actually working, it's just not getting the signal processed to it. So I think it's in the early stages of the radio. I don't think it's further down, it's up here somewhere. I've flipped it over again and I've just been quickly looking through here. I can't see any problems with what I've done. It all kind of makes sense, so I don't know that I've done anything wrong there. I'll have to get the photos out again and just make sure. Sometimes it's a bit hard to see on the photos where some of the wires are going. Now, the only thing I changed in this area, and I don't think it's up there, there's a capacitor here I replaced, and a capacitor there, and a 40k resistor there, which I've put a 39 in, and that's only 3.9. That's only 3.9, not 39. Here's the original one I took out, and that's yellow, black and orange. That's 4, 0 and what's that, 3. So 40k. And I've got, yeah, I've put 3.9 in. I'll take that out and see if that makes a difference. I've put power on and I'm just waiting for it to warm up. Yeah, it's very quiet. Alright, I wasn't sure if that was going to do it or not. Now all I did was tack the original resistor back in and take the new one out of the circuit. It's still there, but it's not connected. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That should be the, yikes. That should be the oscillator there, and it's not oscillating. So there's something else wrong with it still. I've turned the power off again. None of this stuff can be wrong around here. This is all fixed. There's very thick wires, and I've checked them against the photos. There was some confusion with me anyway, with the wiring on these wires here. The photos I had sort of looked down, and it was difficult to see where some of the wires went. So I think if there's a mistake, it'll be in one of these wires here. I know it's not that one because I labelled that one. This one's coming off the capacitor, the tuning capacitor, and doesn't go any, well, it goes into the switch. There's the grid wire coming up from that mixer grid, or going to the grid, and that's connected to that wire there. And that's going off to the tuning capacitor. That's the oscillator. That's the oscillator side of that tuning capacitor, I think, because I worked that out earlier in the video. So that can't be right. That can't be right. That should come, yeah, it should come from the tuning capacitor, but not that side. If anything, it should be on that wire there. That's going off the RF side of the tuning capacitor. I'll go and see if I can find any more photos. I think that's wrong. I was right. This is wrong. I checked up on a bit of video I found that I'd done while I was dismantling it, and sure enough, this is supposed to go up the top here. It's probably going to be too short, so I'll have to put a new bit of wire in. So after saying I thought I had everything right, I had 4 errors at least. Let's hope that was the last one. We'll see if it works now. Okay, I'll put the power back on. Still on dim bulb. Oh, there it is. Oh. It's exactly the same as before I pulled it apart. It's getting one station and another one very faintly. Now we're only on 193. I'll put it on full voltage. It should be okay. I'm getting another station now. Yeah, all the stations are there, but they're very faint. Very faint. Alright, so all the stations are there. The gain is not enough to get them through. There's a lot of static as well, so it may well be in the RF still. I was just going to check the voltages, and it started doing this. Sounds like a mica. There it is. So I couldn't turn that down, so it had to be somewhere in this amplifying stage. I'll get back to checking some voltages first, and I'll report back. I've checked all the voltages, they were okay. I've changed that mica there, and that resistor in there, I replaced that. There was also a mica here in the oscillator circuit, so I've changed that as well. But I turned it on, and a few seconds later, or a few minutes later, it started making another crashing noise. I'm suspecting that one this time. I think that one was faulty. I don't think sometimes when you cut them, the shock seems to get everything working. So I'll cut that one and we'll see what happens then. Yeah, that's what I mean. You touch it and it stops. Now I'm just tuning through the stations here. I can get all of them now, but they're just not very loud. So the oscillator's working again. So I was going to put my phone music through here. I can't play very much of it, of course. Okay, so the amplifier is working all right. There's something towards the front end that's not working properly. So I'll sit here and buzz out some coils, I guess. It could be a faulty coil. Now, I can't remember if I checked these coils or not. I did the IF coils, but I didn't do these ones, I know. These ones I had out, and I'm pretty sure I buzzed them out, but I'll check them again just to make sure. I buzzed out all these coils, and they're all fine. And I did do these ones. I know I did when I had it out. So I did check them again, and they're fine. So what I'll do now is I'll put the signal generator on it and just see if how far the signal's getting, or if it's even getting into this. Maybe I can trace the fault that way. I have the signal generator on, and I'll just letting it warm up. I've got it back on dim bulb just in case. So let's fill that out. There's nothing there. Where's the signal generator? Full volume now. There's nothing. You should hear it. That should be screaming through one way or another. So it's not even getting into the first valve. Oh, there it is. That's shortwave. So it's working on shortwave and not on medium wave. Possibly my poor wiring has come into play again here. It's working on one and not the other. Yep. Alright, I'll do a bit of tracing. Here is the antenna wire coming around. It goes into that connection there. You would switch between shortwave for this side and medium wave that side, I guess. That's the way the switch is going. So that goes off to the coil. This one's going down to this antenna coil. It comes out here and goes to another coil. Why would it go to another coil? Wait a minute. That's not supposed to. That's a ground wire. That antenna wire is going straight to earth. That should be there. That would make sense. The wire from the antenna goes through the coil, comes out here and goes to ground. That's in the wrong place. Should be over there. So that's another stuff up on my part for not paying attention. I'll swap that over to there. I've put power back on. I've still got the signal generator on. There it is. Right, so I'll put the antenna on, we'll see if it works. I'll turn it up.
Rhubarb, including... I can't hardly wait. But let's bring you the stories of the day. Here's the latest update. No. Got a crash on Compton Road, just near the gateway, fly over there, straight in. It's like... Yeah, we'll just... Mate.
9 even. First 4, 987 and 1, 1,596. And the early quaddie 2, 3, 1 and 9 is the jackpot.
It's working. So the whole problem, every problem in there was my doing, from being lax in the way I put it back together. I took a lot of bits apart, but that's no excuse. I marked it and I just didn't mark it well enough. Now the micas are still making a noise in this. There's only 2 left, so I'll just change both micas. If 2 have been cooked, then the other 2 are no doubt very close to being cooked. Because I made so many mistakes and some of them were silly, I'm going to go and have a coffee and I'm going to watch the last 5 episodes of Lost as a punishment. I did my 5 episodes of Lost Penance, and it'll teach me to be more careful in the future. I'm just going to do the alignment now, and that crackling is still there, that hash. You might be able to hear it. I've got the microphone down there. I changed the last 2 micas, and it clearly wasn't the micas. So back to resistors, maybe noisy valve bases, but there's no noise from the valves. So if I remove this valve, yep, the noise is still there. So it's after this valve. It also doesn't respond to turning the volume up and down. So it's after the volume control as well. This is a 6B6 valve, and I've had these before where they have done exactly this. I'm going to replace that. I've got another one. I'll go and grab it. Alright, that's replaced. I'll try that. Yeah, turn that down. There's not a sound from that now. I'll let it run while I do this alignment, but I reckon that's fixed it. So let's do the alignment. I'm all set up. I've got the meter going here. I've plugged the signal generator into the top of the grid of the mixer here. I haven't got the speaker going through the dummy load. It's a bit hard. I could do it. I'd have to unsolder wires and stuff. So I'm just going to try it with the noise going. I'll just get a reading on the meter there. There we go. And the adjustments are through here. I've got the generator on the lowest possible output. It's about as good as I'll get that one. I've changed the scale on the meter. Alright, we'll try this one. It's good. That one was the only one that was okay. I'm assuming this is 455 because I looked at every other radio that Bland made and it was always 455, so I'm assuming that's what it's going to be. I'll just go back and just check the adjustment on these 2 and that'll be it for the IF. Alright, I've done them both again and they're perfect. So we're set at 455. I can't do the alignment of the dial because I haven't got a dial on there, so the next thing I'm going to do is put the dial back on. As I said the other day, I reassembled this already. The spring that was on here, which is this one here, it just breaks. I tried to straighten it and then reuse it, but I couldn't do it. So I fashioned a spring out of an ordinary spring. It's not very neat. It's one of the worst things I've done, I think. But anyway, it's working all right. It takes out the lash. It springs it back to one side. So there's not a lot of lash in there anyway, but it does work. And when it's assembled, there's a plate here that this will sit on. So it'll be okay. The other problem was the glass, and there's not a lot left of it. And this is just flaking off. It falls off. There's bits of paint all over the house where I had this located sitting on the desk, and there's just paint everywhere as the wind's just blown it away. So I can't reuse that. I had ideas of painting it with some clear coat to try and seal it off, but there's nothing left of it. So what I did was scan this into my computer. I then reproduced it using Inkscape, and Inkscape's a free vector-based program. It's very good. It's a little bit of a learning curve, but once you get the hang of it, it's quite easy to use. I had this printed off at Officeworks to get a better copy than I can do on my home printer. That would be Staples or something in America. I'm not sure what it would be in the UK. But that's come up okay. So I'm going to clean this off. I have to use this glass again. It cost me a fortune to get one cut with a hole in it. So I'm going to clean all this off and just use the glass again. Looks like the only colour that's stuck is the yellow. The blue, white, the green's sticking, the rest of it. The blue was just falling off. That was the one that was leaving all the colour everywhere in the house. So I might have to get the blade onto these. Isn't that funny how one colour's better than the other? Alright, I'll keep working on this. I've cleaned the glass off and it's sitting on top of the print now. I'm just going to cut it with a knife. There we go. Here's the frame and I'm just dropping the glass in there. There we go. That's the bottom of the frame, so I'll put this the right way up. And there's a plate to go on top of that. And then the 4 screws that screw it into the corner there. Alright, there it is, and it looks really good. The light may not light this up as well as the printed. I'm going to have to wait and see on that, but that looks good. Looks really good. Now I should be able to put this mechanism on. Some screws in here and 2 at the other end. The bottom ones we have to wind all the way around, and there it is. Okay, that's that part done. All that's left to go on is the pointer, and I've put a piece of piano wire in there. I drilled this out, put some piano wire in. I've covered it with heat shrink and then painted the whole thing. This had gone a rather yellow looking colour, so I decided to paint it. Now I'll adjust that properly when I get inside and it's mounted on the capacitor, and we can do the alignment. Alright, let's put this on. I've set this mechanism here to be in the middle. I've got the dial in the middle, and I've got the tuning capacitor about 90 degrees, so everything's centered. I'll do the 2 screws up and that should be it. Alright, let's see how it went. And it's pretty much vertical there, a little bit more. A bit sticky there, it's not too bad. So yeah, it needs to be adjusted around a little bit. Probably about there somewhere. Close enough, I reckon. Alright, now we can try doing some of the alignment. I've set up to do the dial adjustment. There's 3 adjusters here, and I've got the needle on 600 or 7ZL in Hobart. The generator's on 600. So I can hear something already. There it is. So it's a little bit out. Now I should be able to bring it back in with this one. Okay, that wasn't far out. So now I'll go up to 14 on the gauge on the front here, the meter on the dial on the front. And set the frequency generated to 14, there we go. Can't hear anything, turn it up. It's not there. Ooh, it's way out, okay. I'll just take it a little bit off. I think it'll be this one. Whoa. Okay, I've got the dial now on 14. I'll just tune that in. Okay, that's exactly on 14 there. So back to 600. I'll just check it again. And it's on 600. So perfect. Absolutely perfect. So I put the dial on 1500 and I've got the generator on 1500. All that's left to do is to peak this one here. So let's turn it up. That's it. Sorry about the noise. Well, that's all aligned now. Everything is working really well. I'll turn it over and we'll give it a bit of a run, see what it does. I've flipped it over. It's pretty much complete. I've put everything back on, I think. I'll just turn it up.
Make it work a little, and the Jackson painting forced to get a little anxious here on Lothario to try and get around them. They go to that turn, and for the time being,
Yeah, for sure. Around 34,000 Australians are registered with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade as being...
To you, matters to us. 7 p.m. on ABC TV and streaming on iView.
Today would have been Paul Williams' birthday. He died in 1973. He was one of the founding members of the Temptations. He was also a choreographer, helping shape the way the group looked on stage. Alex Chambers has more.
So it's working quite well. Once again, my aerial's so bad. I've got a new aerial here. I'm going to put it up one day. But in the meantime, it's pretty bad. So I can get the strong stations all right, but not so much the weaker ones. And of course, it's playing through a speaker that's virtually got no cone left. So yeah, looking good. That's looking good. There's still a few things to do. I'll put the lights back on and they need to be mounted back in their little holders. I've got to come up with a speaker solution. I'm not sure what I'm going to do there. I'd probably go to permanent magnet, but I'll see what I can do otherwise. Yeah, be a bit to do still. And I've really enjoyed doing this, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. And I hope you can join me for my next radio adventure.